privileged and honored to be your host for this afternoon. So for those of you who don't know the Women's Federation, since 1992, the Women's Federation for World Peace has been working in various fields as an NGO, being recognized for their numerous projects, grassroots local community work, educational and charity projects, to being recognized on an international level by the United Nations. In recent years, the Women's Federation has had the honor of maintaining Economical and Social Council, general consultative status with the UN and Department of Public Information for the last 2 decades. As one of the economical and social and political developments, the Women's Federation launched an educational program, the Speech Contest, solely sponsored by the UK chapter of the Women's Federation for World Peace. Since 2015, this program has provided a remarkable platform for the young women of today to speak their minds, to deepen their thoughts, and to speak their truth, to give us an insight into their beliefs and values they continue to fight for every day. The gift of public speaking is not one to be undermined, for it is powerful. For that is when people come together, when individuals express a truth, their truth. That is only then do we remember and realize that we as human beings cannot be any more connected through our similarities and differences. And so this platform resonates with me and has risen for me, and hopefully I can, dare I say, arisen out of the need for the world to be inspired by the younger generation and tomorrow's leaders. The proceedings of each contestant requires participants to compose an all-inspiring speech. Successful applicants went through the various stages of selection, from submitting their pieces to telephone interviews, and finally making it this far to the live finals. So congratulations, ladies. Their perseverance and determination has been a rewarding experience for us all. And so in order to promote this project, we formed a speech contest committee. And I'd like to invite onto the stage the chair of the committee, for had it not been for her hard working and perseverance and determination, I doubt we would all be sitting here today. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mrs. Taker Duckworth.
Thank you. Yeah, you're tall, I'm not tall. I had a bit more adjusting. So good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to express my gratitude to all those in the audience for supporting and attending this event, despite your busy schedules. And I would particularly like to say thank you to the judges for your contribution towards this contest in offering your precious time and experience. And for the finalists, I would like to say that your efforts through lonely battles in reaching this far have been already rewarded with sitting here in this room, because you're the finalists. So you should be proud of yourselves, whatever result transpires in this final today. As some of you may be able to tell, I am originally from Japan. Although I have been in the UK for over 35 years, since my marriage to an Englishman, I have never lost my Japanese identity. For such a person as myself to make a public speech on this type of occasion is not an easy matter at all, honestly. And yet I'm pushing myself to give the opening remarks here today so that each one of you can feel more confident about your speech. After all, if I can speak like this, I'm sure you will certainly do much better. Yeah? So in today's world, not only humanity, but also all of the creation has been suffering as a result of endless violence and conflict around us. Many of the crooked and twisted ideologies pervading society behind which lies only self-interest and self-justification, have been propagated through the medium of mass media and social media. And at every moment, they are provoking people to think and act in a destructive way. The Women's Federation has been working very hard ever since it was launched in 1992, not to fight against those wrongly directed forces, but instead to swallow and digest and change the direction by setting out an example of a women's group which actively lives for the sake of others in order to bring true peace to the world. Having worked in accordance with the United Nations Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, the Women's Federation has been focusing on educating young people through initiating several projects from the local grassroots to national and international level. This speech contest itself was launched 2 years ago as a part of educational projects in order to offer a platform for young women to gain confidence and a sense of ownership through the process of training their public speaking capabilities. Why a speech contest? Why not, for example, a singing contest? If any of you are fans of TV shows such as The X Factor, you may realize that such a singing contest is no doubt separating out those who don't have a genuine talent. But unfortunately, such a singing talent is not earned by your own efforts. It was already given by nature, wasn't it? And not everyone has such a talent by nature. However, if you seek to improve your public speaking abilities with enough effort, you can definitely become a winner. By focusing all your intellect, will, and emotional power, by thoroughly studying the theme you wish to speak about, by checking your words, tone of voice, and presentation, these practices will be certain to develop your initial abilities into a real talent. That is why the speech contest offers an equal opportunity to every young woman. And through the efforts made for this contest, we hope and believe every young woman can start to realize something precious and important in the most inner part of herself. It should become the starting point to embark on her own real life. Although the scale of this speech contest is still very small, we will develop each year and keep offering an opportunity to all young women to be able to raise their voices and express what they think and believe and are committed to, and let people be aware of that. So I would like to conclude my introduction here and invite Sharon, your MC today, who won the second prize in last year's contest. I'm very proud of her. But before her coming up here, I just would like to show this very primitive handwriting sign for the finalists. So each of you coming up to the 8 minutes past since you started your speech, I just on the second row waving this for you. So if you catch this in your eyes, you really try to conclude your speech within 2 minutes because you're given 10 minutes maximum. Okay? So I would like to invite Sharon to be here and let her commence the speech contest for young women 2017. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teiko. Before starting the program, I would like to now kindly ask everyone to please switch off their phones, their mobile phones. Because of the nature of this event and noise-sensitive performance, anyone who arrives after doors are closed will not be allowed to enter the room. We have prepared for them to sit and watch the program by a live video on the screen in the cafeteria downstairs. And we have also prepared some refreshments later on. Now, I'd like to introduce to you first our 3 judges. They have extensive knowledge, skill, and experience in public speaking, and have been or currently are in such a position. Amongst the three judges, the chief judge is Mr. Tim Miller. Mr. Miller, please, could you stand or give us a wave so everybody knows who you are? Mr. Miller is a board of member of South East England Faith Forum, trustee and treasurer of Hastings and District Interfaith Forum, and a service coordinator of the Association of Carers in East Sussex. He was also former vice president of UPF Europe for 10 years. Through the UPF, he has been organizing European leadership conferences since 2004 till 2013. He has been a lecturer and a public speaker for the FFWPU and UPF on numerous occasions. He has been with us as chief judge ever since we started this contest in 2015. Our next judge I would like to introduce to you is Dr. Christina Scharff. Please stand or give us a wave. Dr. Christina Scharff. Dr. Christina Scharff is a senior lecturer in culture, media, and creative industries at King's College London. Christina's research interests are in the area of gender, media, and culture. She has published widely, including the book Repudiating Feminism, Young Women in a Neoliberal World, and with Rosalind Gill, New Femininities, Post-Feminism, Neoliberalism, and Subjectivity. Dr. Scharff is currently conducting a research project on the working lives of creatives, looking in particular at young women who work in the classical music profession. And our last but not least judge is Mrs. Mitty Tohma, the president of the WFWP UK. If you could give us a wave. Thank you. Mrs. Tohma has been serving this organization since the Women's Federation was first inaugurated in 1992. And during the last 12 years as the president of the UK chapter and the vice of the Women's Federation Europe, she's been dedicating herself to encouraging many women, young and old, from local branch level to the international network, together for the sake of others. She has a wonderful Japanese husband who has always been an unsung hero to her, and they have 3 beautiful daughters, 2 of whom have just been married this year. Before the first person comes up to the stage, I would like to briefly explain about the rules which apply for the finalists. Speech length, 8 to 10 minutes. The speeches that are too long or too short will be penalized. You are allowed notes. The finalists may use notes, but not read from a prepared text. And once you've performed your speech, the finalists will be questioned by the judges on the content of their speech. Answers will be taken into consideration as part of their evaluation. The judges will then evaluate the speech according to the following 4 categories: speaking skills, content, presentation skills, and answering questions. Now, moment we've been waiting for. I was going to click, but then it's not poetry. Now, let us welcome our first finalist of the day, Winnie Phillips, who's come from Leighton today. Winnie Phillips.
I'm also small. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Winnie, and my speech today is Lost Generations, First Generation Millennials. Thank you for being here today. Leaving home for a new home can be a very scary moment for anyone, no matter what age. Change is something we all fear, whether it be good or bad. We always seem to pull through, and no matter how long it takes, we tend to adapt as we have as humans. We have done it now for millions of years. As young children, our parents move us due to circumstances beyond their control, or otherwise pursuing different lives in different places. It would be a great venture for the family or a frightening one, and coming to terms with these changes can affect us later as adults. We see a lot of children being displaced due to war, economic crisis, environmental chaos, crime, drugs, and alcohol abuse, and many other reasons not being able to comprehend these changes in their lives. As a child, I moved from a third world country, or an undeveloped country, to a first world country. It seemed to be such a small transition as a small child, getting on a plane and coming to a cold December in London. I remember the process of going to visa interviews and having to practice with my family. Questions that were very simple that still had to be practiced. Looking back at the process, it was very long and tiring for my family, and having tried once before to come to the UK. My dreams were filled with being with my mother in a better life, in a better country, a new place to call home. I never thought how different life would be from where I was born and where I would grow up as an adult. I know those around me, my friends and family had great expectations coming to the UK. My brother and I were always there for each other, and people thought we were twins. Can I have my, I'm just going to grab my water. Excuse me. We were dressed the same as baby, but as we got older, the girls became what girls wear and boys what boys wore. I would be so frustrated. I wanted to do things my brother did. Getting dirty, being more like a boy. I remember him going away for Christmas with family members, but I couldn't go because I was a girl. And my question was always why. I wanted to do what he was doing. This was a sad moment for me as it was Christmas. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you. It was always around Christmas time, and I was so upset remembering the heat during the holidays. When me and my brother were young, I would see him do things which I couldn't do because I was a girl. Girls don't play with boys, otherwise you would get pregnant. You see, you don't want this to happen. You can't have babies when you're young. It happens, and it's the worst thing imaginable. I looked forward to the days I would be with my mother in London, where there would be no restrictions, and I could do what I wanted. But to be honest, it was still similar. She explained to me, as a girl or a woman, we studied and we get jobs. You don't think about anything else but this. Even though I had moved to a new place and a new home, everything was the same. The rules and culture still applied. I stayed at home because girls can't go outside gallivanting, looking for boys. I didn't really want to do this. I just wanted to go with my friends, go to McDonald's, buy a McFlurry, although all my friends just wanted to talk about boys. Although we moved from Africa, we still lived in an African household. We followed the rules. Unless you leave, get your own house, and you can live under your own rules, which would be impossible if you were 12 or 13. I used to think of how lucky some girls at my schools were, as they didn't live in an African household, following African rules. Their mums were so cool, and mine was boring and strict. The culture clash was immense, outside of the house, at school, and my friend's house, and at the park. I felt like I lived 3 different lives, having 3 different personas. I would change my behavior just to get out of trouble. I do come across as a quiet and shy person, but I get comfortable and I would relax and give off a different energy. This kind of living has impacted me during different stages of my life. At times I would miss out on things I wanted to do, as I would be too vigilant and always think bad of a scenario. I'd be too scared to ask questions without being met with hostilities and more questions. I feel it's also given me a negative judge on characters, at times not knowing when to get close to people. If I had questions, I wouldn't go to anyone close to me. The internet was the place to go, or to my school friends. I acted out in subtle ways, not being noticed. I would find ways to be vague in what I did. I rehearsed my questions at times to my mother. I would tell the truth, and it would be more suspicious, where my brothers literally lied his way out. Although I do love having 2 homes where I can go, know I can see people I love, and speak 2 different languages fluently, I always forget that I have lived here longer than my other home, and change is always inevitable and will always be scary and can happen so quickly. I've met people from all walks of life, and everyone always asks me, do you feel more Kenyan or British? They always say I'm lost in my identity. I don't know where I come from because I'm confused. I'm not like other African girls, but I'm sorry I didn't get a memo on how to act like other African girls. I know who I am, I know where I'm from and where I am. There are some changes that will take a while to come for girls. I still think girls from ethnic backgrounds struggle with culture differences at home and in society. If they are being themselves, they're acting out, and it's because they've been brought up here in the UK. It seems as if nature is nurturing girls to misbehave by finding different identities to those back home. Nature and nurture going hand in hand. We try to enforce core values, just don't sit well, and it can upset people and make them not want to associate with their culture. Identity is more than just a passport or a driving license. As we find new cultures, we find more about ourselves. We always have to work hard to show others who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. My name's Mitty.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, well done. You were very brave.
Thank you.
I just want to question if you could elaborate a little bit more on how you feel about your identity at this stage.
I'm proud Kenyan, but I still need to get my Kenyan passport. And also, I'm a proud British person, and I represent both cultures wherever I go. Yeah.
If we have time, can we ask? Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Winnie. I have a question, which is, what would you advise other girls to do who are in a similar situation than the one you found yourself in?
Sometimes, like I said, you can learn from others through your own, about your cultures. Because I've been to Japan and they have names that have different meanings in my country, or they have food that they do, which is also the same. So just learn about others, and then you learn more about yourself.
Just I wanted to ask, as you come to terms with, your roots and your experience here, do you find a way to draw also things of value from your origins that can, be good for your life here as well? And if so, what sort of things?
Even though my mom was strict, I think it was kind of good for me in some ways. Learning just to be vigilant, I think, as well, that kind of skill. And just learning to be open as well sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Next up, our third finalist, Fidelia am I saying it right? Okandze? Okay. Okandze. She's come all the way from Kent today. Everyone, please welcome Fidelia.
So, today I'll be talking about education, youth, and resilience. I was born in Congo. I moved to Ivory Coast when I was 4, and I've lived in the UK since I was 8. When I moved to the UK aged 8, I spoke no word of English except good morning, which my mother taught me at the airport when we landed. I could not have begun to imagine how far I was from home, and was probably more than a little overwhelmed by the, frankly, terrible weather. Presently, I hold only the memories I have constructed using the stories my grandmother tells me of our life in Congo and the stories my mother tells me of our life in Ivory Coast. I've always had a patchy memory of my upbringing before England. When I was younger, I could only recall a faint memory of watching the tops of palm trees go by from the back of a car window on a highway in Ivory Coast, and beyond the trees, the glimmer of the sea. Occasionally, a familiar smell will trigger unanticipated strong emotions of longing, but without anchor to a memory, I was simply left to feel the unease of a missing self. When I visited Congo for the first time in 2011, since my departure at age 4, I found myself forced to acknowledge something I'd only heard in passing from my mother. My grandmother, when cuddling me, would say to me in French, "You and I, we fled the war together, do you remember?" And she would tell me the story of how she carried me on her back, age 3, as bombs fell from the sky in Congo-Brazzaville. She would tell me how she could still hear the missiles ringing in her ears as she slept, all the while asking me if I remembered. At the time, I felt stupid and ashamed for not remembering. I felt guilt in not being able to share in my grandmother's experience of pain and trauma. But it wasn't until I was doing my undergraduate degree in psychology that I was provided with many means to explaining my selective amnesia. And that, for me, is where my journey began. Against all odds, I went to Cambridge University because I decided that I wanted to become a clinical psychologist working in pediatrics. Presently, I am an honorary assistant psychologist at Maudsley Hospital in South London, and I'm working on a project to build a library in Congo-Brazzaville targeting identity and resilience in youth. Many significant milestones were met on my first trip back to Congo in 2011. I found myself sharing in the local children and adolescents' frustration of not being able to find a single library which wasn't disguised as a bookshop or didn't require an extortionate amount for membership or an academic professor status. From then, the seed of an idea was planted, but wouldn't come to fruition until a 2-month teaching volunteer program in Nepal in 2016. Another significant milestone was coming across what is now one of my favorite TED Talks by acclaimed author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, where she talks about the danger of a single story. She talks about how vulnerable and how impressionable children are in the face of a single story, and how her own discovery of African writers saved her from having a single story of what books are. This talk moved me and stirred something dormant in me. I decided that I wanted to build a library in Congo with books that children felt they could relate to. But it wasn't until my trip to Nepal that I was provided with an opportunity to start on my journey. I was introduced to an engineer who had helped to rebuild a school that had been destroyed in the earthquakes in 2015. After a brief talk about my project, he was willing to help me build the Congolese Library of African Literature. Growing up, I wasn't exposed to African literature until I was 17 and reading Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe in my English literature and language class. There was something truly spectacular about reading a critically acclaimed book which reflected my African values. It had never occurred to me that people who looked like me and people who shared the same cultural values as me could also be bestsellers. Researchers Daniel and Wassel describe resilience in terms of intrinsic and extrinsic factors. One of the intrinsic factors they describe is good self-esteem in the form of an internal sense of worth and competence. The importance of recognizing oneself in literature is very often overlooked. The power of placing oneself and one's cultural identity can be used as a tool in enhancing resilience in the face of academic and environmental adversity, especially for young girls and boys in developing countries such as Congo. I believe that by influencing perceptions of self, I can motivate individuals to bring about physical changes within their surrounding community. A recurring question I've had on my journey with the Brazzaville Library Project is whether there's a reading culture in Africa. Firstly, I'd like to clarify that culture is man-made. Whenever I think of reading culture in Africa, there is one particular project that comes to mind. In 1999, a community library project was launched in Kitengesa in Uganda with a box of approximately 160 books. Today, that box is a building offering well over 3,000 books, as well as various programs in partnership with local primary schools. Within 2 years of the library opening in 2002, 342 people had acquired membership. By 2007, that number had risen to 616. The project has attracted much attention over the years, both as a research and development project, and that is something I would very much like to replicate in Congo-Brazzaville. We hope to use the Kitengesa Community Library as a guideline for Congo's own library project journey and hopefully build on their findings. The goal is to generate funding not only for construction, but to carry out research of our own on the library's use, users, and impact within the surrounding community. When I was completing my undergraduate degree, my mother persuaded me to use a part of the maintenance grant I received from the UK government to invest in land in Congo. Now, she could not have known what I would later use that land for, and you can only imagine how reluctant I was to part with these funds that were keeping me afloat at university. But now looking back, I could not be more thankful for the sacrifice I made, because today it is that land I have donated for the construction of Congo's first African literature library. Though we have land, it is clear we have yet a long way to go. But what I find most reassuring is that in the past, the events that I took to be wholly unremarkable have down the line transformed into huge milestones that have later changed the direction of my life. So today I am an honorary assistant psychologist with a passion for a project involving youth development in Congo. But I hope that over time, my own resilience will allow me to develop the dreams, aspirations, and contribution I hope to make to the world. Thank you.
Fidelia? Yeah, thank you so much.
Hello.
I just got a question about how you're planning to, just briefly, how you plan to raise funds in order to, set up this library.
Yeah. So we have a fundraising going on for initial plan. So we're raising about £2,700 for initial site visit for the engineer, for kind of to go to Congo and meet with government officials and kind of get an overall idea of what the project will be like, what we'll need and all that stuff. And also the money that we're fundraising for will also go towards funding applications, which the engineer will help me with. And I'm also hoping to build a tribe of some sort to help me out, because it's quite difficult doing it with 2 people. But the idea is we apply to loads of funding sources and hopefully generate funding that way, but it will definitely take a lot longer. Maybe I'm thinking 5-6 years. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Fidelia. I was struck by your use of the term resilience, and I'm wondering whether it's to do with your work as a clinical psychologist, or whether you chose it for different reasons. And I'm asking this because it's one of those terms that we hear a lot at work. For example, as academics, we are taught it's not that you have to work too much; you just have to become more resilient.
Yeah.
You have to just be able to work 70 hours a week and still be strong and healthy, and all those kind of things. So I was wondering whether you could expand on that a bit more, especially in relation to the link between reading and building up resilience.
Yeah. I came across the term resilience when I was completing my master's degree. I found that it was surprisingly something that I somehow didn't come across beforehand. And I also felt it was a part of me that I hadn't otherwise been exposed to before. And I did my master's degree on it, and then the idea of the library, there was whole build-up. And I found that actually the entire term actually feeds into what I'm doing right now, and the idea of building resilience in these kids in Congo that don't have everything that we have today, and using my own resilience to inspire them in a way, to become stronger within themselves, to make the changes themselves rather than me making the changes for them. So.
Could I ask you just to amplify a little bit how that connects to what you referred to as the danger of a single story?
Yes. So Chimamanda talks about the danger of a single story. The thing about kids in Congo is that not only do they not have the access to schools, the access to books that we do, the abundant access to books, is that a lot of the books that they receive are from the West, and they don't portray them as black people, as black kids. So whenever they see these successful kids in these books, they don't look like them, and so they don't see it as they can be as successful as this person, because obviously that's not me. And the danger there is that if they're only ever exposed to those kinds of books for their entire life, then they'll never know what else is out there for them to be exposed to. So I wanted to change the narrative a bit and provide another perception of success, but that reflects them as black kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fidelia. Our fourth finalist, Jodie Dontje, who's come all the way from Australia and is currently teaching in London. Please welcome Jodie.
Waste, shame. A waste of space, shame. A waste of air, shame, waste. Namaste. My name is Jodie Dontje. Topai Verde Kusi Lagu. I'm very happy to be here. I'm 24 years old and I'm from Australia, the land of the kangaroos. Waste, shame. A waste of space, shame. A waste of air, shame, waste. that is what I was called. Shame, that is what I felt. I would like to share my story about overcoming shame with you all. And it begins with how my life was severely impacted by financial hardship. In the first 18 years of my life, I lived in 16 different homes. For a child growing up, this unstable foundation, this constant moving between different states of Australia meant that I never fully gained a sense of my identity. I started to develop severe shame in who I was. And then began the difficult adolescent years. According to UNFPA, youth as a whole undergo many obstacles that stop them from safely transitioning into adulthood. Up to 60% of youth in developing regions are not working or are not in school. And unfortunately, even to those teenagers who do have a stable foundation, finding oneself in a high school institution with contradicting and uncertain personalities surrounding you is a difficult endeavour. For me, predictably, the hardest move was to another high school, where I unfortunately underwent bullying. I was called a waste of space. I was called a waste of air. I had once been spat on and been told the world would be better off without me. I felt completely disempowered. I felt immense shame, but I kept pushing on. I was called names, made fun of, bullied because I was of mixed background, because I was mixed race. My parents were born overseas. What was it like growing up as a first-generation Australian for me? Shameful. From my immense experience and from my research, I have found that all women undergo a level of shame in some facet of their life as they transition from girl into womanhood. Women, especially through puberty, can view their bodies as shameful. They become increasingly aware of the impending judgment from others, including social, religious, and ethical constraints. Women are taught to blame themselves when subjected to racism, sexism, and violence. We women all undergo some level of shame. And my most severe shame growing up branched out of being the ongoing subject of racism and bullying. My feelings of insecurity, of not belonging, of discomfort, my sense of worthlessness, ugliness, and incapability all branched out of my pulsing, excruciating, and suffocating identity issues. According to nobullying.com, 44.2% of middle school students have experienced bullying, and young women experience bullying more than young men in school. Is there hope amongst this ever-reoccurring cycle of shame in women? Yes. I am proof of this, and I believe that all women can use their story of shame as a powerful tool to enable them to make positive changes in others, in their environment, and in themselves. Shame isn't to be shied from. Shame isn't to be ignored, unaddressed, and completely disregarded. Shame is a powerful gift. Let me explain why. Brené Brown speaks about the power of vulnerability in one of her TED Talks, and it is true. After years of uncertainty throughout my life, when I started university, I promised myself that I would have the courage to overcome my shame. So I started to volunteer for countless organisations and initiatives, including the AIM program, where I was able to mentor young Indigenous Australians about their identity, to help them to overcome shame, to become proud of themselves. Slowly, after years of volunteering, my confidence began to grow. However, I hadn't yet become vulnerable. I hadn't yet shared my story, but just enabled others to shape theirs. And I realised that it was only through vulnerability that I would be able to genuinely empower others. So I decided to enter a social media competition, which is about how I contributed to the community and how that helped me. With a pounding heart, a deep breath, and fighting to hold on to courage, I shared my story of bullying and of my shame. And to my surprise, the reaction was so overwhelmingly positive that I won that competition. And then the turning point of opportunities presented itself. A young lady who volunteered with me 6 months prior then approached me. She had seen my vulnerability and she asked me, "Have you ever considered volunteering overseas in Nepal?" No, a year prior that idea would have haunted me, but I took that opportunity and I went to Nepal. And it was in Nepal, where the villagers thought I was Nepali, that I truly found my identity, my happiness, my true belonging and reason. The cultural heritage that had once separated me from my peers was now the contributing factor that connected me to the Nepalese people. I remember walking down that hill, holding the hands of the young children I just taught at a very low socioeconomic school in semi-rural Nepal. I remember walking down that hill, holding their hands to their parents' house, which were literally little shacks made of bamboo and mud, and the parents would knelt down on the dirty ground with the little money they had, cooking for their whole family in small broken pots. And when they saw me, their faces lighted up and they offered me food and tea even though they had so little. And it was in that moment that I realised I had nothing to worry about, that I was so lucky, that I should not feel shame, that my life was not a waste of space. I was someone who could make a positive difference in the world. And I realised that my international connection and heritage would enable me to create positive differences around the globe and around Nepal. And now, it's with a thankful heart and a soul full of gratitude that I share with you all my passion. I stand here today as a proud international humanitarian and founder of a non-for-profit charity called the Help Nepal Appeal. I have an incredible growing team that are helping communities, families and individuals across Nepal through empowerment and education programs, including youth and women empowerment. We have helped thousands of Nepali people in regions such as Kaski, Tanahu, Kavre and local to Kathmandu districts. We launched a program called Student Leadership Councils, where we're able to bring equality between young men and young women in low socioeconomic communities to help them transition into adulthood. In Nepal, women can feel so much shame that they don't form an opinion or speak up when men are in the room. According to the UNFPA population report, we are at the highest rate of youth population in history, and 600 million of those are young adolescent girls and young women. Across the globe, women continue to face gender bias, discrimination, marginalisation and violence, including unequal access to education and opportunities for leadership and participation. I used to be one of those women who were continuously discriminated against on a daily basis. But now I spend every day ensuring that I can empower women to not be part of those statistics, to never have to feel that way. So the Help Nepal Appeal aims to align with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainability Goals to give equal opportunity for women. Furthermore, women in Nepal feel shame because of their menstrual cycles, including limited access to sanitary materials. Young women can feel fear, confusion and shame in the classroom due to leakage and dropping of sanitary materials, staining and smelling of clothes, and undergo harassment from the young male students and teachers. I used to be isolated, targeted and made to feel shame. So the Help Nepal Appeal's aim is to help women to overcome this taboo of shame and to help communities to overcome this, especially in Western Nepal, where some women are often shunned to isolated huts and even cattle sheds when on their period. Furthermore, women undergo shame because of their status in the family. Nepal has the third highest rate of child marriage in Asia. 48.5% of young women marry before 18 years of age. An inspirational book called Half the Sky confronts the realities of women and explains that keeping girls in school longer led to women marrying later. So with this in mind, we launched a program called the Save a Child program, where we gave opportunities for women across Nepal to gain an education. I am a catalyst for change. I stand here today with the hope of empowering you all to realise your worth. We women all have the potential to overcome shame. Together, we can achieve more, give more, learn more, and become more. Oh, and in regards to my identity, well, I'm now proud to say I'm half Dutch, half Chinese, born in Australia, living in the UK, travelling through Europe, learning about the world and passionate about Nepal. We have to consistently face our fears. As Grant Cardone explains, fear is nothing but false events appearing real. Once we embrace our fear of shame, once we embrace struggle, we create an opportunity and a story that connects us all. We are women, and this is our story. Hamia Rukalagi Bashnu Pacha, we should live for others, be brave, be vulnerable, and be kind. Dhanyavad, thank you. Hi, namaste.
Could you just tell me a little bit more? Because you said that only through my vulnerability would I be able to genuinely empower others.
Yes.
Could you just explain that a bit more?
Yes. I realised that ultimately I couldn't become the best version of myself and to truly help people unless I could look back onto my past and realise what I had gone through so I can use that story to help others. I came across a lot of Indigenous students who had a story as well about bullying and racism and shame, and I thought that if I can't speak up about my story, how can I truly empower people with their story? So that's why I took that step and I made sure I became vulnerable so I could then help others to become vulnerable. Thank you.
Just to let you know, we are sticking to one question from now on just for timekeeping purposes.
Okay.
So that's why. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jodie. Our next finalist is Batul Al-Shabati, who's come from Northwest London and is currently studying chemical engineering in Birmingham. Everybody please welcome Batul.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. My topic will be about the sexualization of females in society. The right and status of women is an issue that has always been debated at great length throughout the discourse of history. There is no denying that recently, great advancements have been made regarding the legal rights of women, such as their right to work, to pursue an education, to vote, etc. However, it seems to me that the treatment of females in today's ever-growing, hypersexualized world, from a moral perspective, is not only demeaning and stripping away from the human dignity, but it is also affecting and demoralizing those who believe in core principles and values, such as modesty and chastity, to be in fact the solution to that hypersexualization that is so prevalent in the world today. I will begin with an anecdote from my mother's early youthful period, where she grew up in Lebanon. The society during the 1970s in Lebanon was similar to that of England today, in the sense that it was accepting of widespread sexual freedom. Despite my mother's young age, her innate instinct drew her to modesty, as she felt uncomfortable promoting a sexual appeal in public through the way she dressed and acted. And that was the norm at the time, by the way. She looked up to sacred individuals such as Lady Mary and would take her as a role model. Now, during the Civil War at the time, she became the victim of a fatal injury in her head, where she almost lost her life. It was during this crucial period where she saw death in front of her very own eyes that reality truly hit her. She had a purpose in life and cannot go on living the way society dictates it to be. It was then that she made a promise with God. She promised that if he was to extend her life, she would search for what it is he expects from her and will follow it. Now, an outcome of the searching led her ultimately to dressing more modestly. Something within her nature just knew at that tender age of 14 that dressing provocatively in public was morally wrong, and that getting closer to God requires one to observe that modesty and chastity. And that was when, by the grace of God, she received the necessary operations and she survived. However, of course, by choosing to wear the head covering and to adopt that modest demeanor, she received the negative end of the stick, where she was labeled as backwards and not adhering to the modern rules of society. When we think about it today, it is unfortunate that such views still exist, where in fact the degradation of women has become so widespread in media culture, and the modest demeanor is something that is so frowned upon that it's reached the point where it's unusual to find a TV advert or a billboard without there being some sort of sexual appeal promoted through a female. Furthermore, as a youth growing up within this generation, I have witnessed the effects that celebrities and the entertainment industry has had on me, myself, as well as my fellow friends and classmates, where such individuals are given so much unnecessary reverence and attention for petty reasons such as the way they look. Until only recently was I personally able to detach myself from this whole selfie obsession and culture. Only until recently was I able to fully wipe off any form of cosmetics from my face. Funnily enough, in that period of time when I used to apply makeup, the more I would apply, the less prettier I felt. And naturally, I became more obsessed and consumed with public opinion. Why? Because not receiving a compliment or a look from somebody when you had put in that effort and you had made your effort to look good made me feel quite low, because I felt like I wasn't getting what I was expecting from everyone. that had kept me immersed in the trivial and petty materialistic affairs that are being promoted by the media culture, rather than having me as a youth focus on the really important and productive aspects that should be concerning me, such as my physical, spiritual, psychological, educational, and mental health. I find it very unfortunate that as women, we are increasingly being convinced that in order to develop a personality and have some self-worth, that we need to look physically attractive and appealing to men. For the greatness of women does not depend on their ability to attract the attention of immoral men. This will not bring about dignity and respect for them. The greatness of women depends on their ability to focus on their purpose in existence, and that is to acquire knowledge and contribute towards the betterment of human society. The woman is sacred, with the responsibility of rearing children and instilling core values within them. It is through women that the future of our society is determined. This is not something to be taken lightly. We should be treated with respect, but of course we should first and foremost treat ourselves with respect in order to receive that as well. Moreover, it is important now that we at least try to identify and tackle the root cause of the sexualization that's so prevalent. And I would argue that it mainly stems from the unlimited sexual freedom that is so prevalent. And if you think about it, without there being limits established for the relations between men and women, sexual excitement and stimulation increase, and when they increase, they become unquenchable. This is because by its very nature, the sexual instinct is a very powerful and deep-rooted one. Although one thinks that by giving into it and obeying it, one has control over it, they're wrong, because its rebellious nature continues to show forth, and it's one of those desires that you can never get enough of. So it's exactly for this reason that ethical and religious principles have been established over time to regulate these unending human desires in the right direction, which, if taken out of those bounds, will lead to human destruction. It's shown that where sexual freedom is very prevalent, psychological illnesses such as the addiction to pornography are greater than in a society which has sexual limitations. But what exactly is meant here by sexual limitations? Celibacy? Of course not. By limitation, I mean limiting these sexual affairs to an established institution. An established institution that's very own basis lays down the foundation for commitment between the two couples. That's very important. And that is within marriage relations. Now, I've mentioned the marital environment. And in relation to this, quite interestingly, some people would ask, why is it that I'm advocating that sexual relations should only take place between a husband and a wife? Although it's true that in reality, many marriages do fail. And many unmarital relationships are indeed very successful. We need to denote that marriages do not fail due to there being an issue with the institution of marriage itself, but due to the fact that the commitment, the rights and responsibilities that were laid out by the marriage contract at the start was not fulfilled by the two couples, right? But however, in the former successful unmarital relation, the couples may have decided to commit despite there not being a contract present to sign initially. So what's important to denote here is that the foundation of marriage is a legitimate one. It's a holy one. It's an institution that's based on rights and responsibilities. Sexual relations is part of that right, but it's not the only right. However, if we're looking at any other relationship, because that contract was not set out in the first place in a formal way, there's no accountability for the rights and responsibilities. Therefore, that foundation can more easily be broken and is not taken as seriously. I would like to conclude by saying that this is due to the fact that both genders within widespread society are indulging in this free sexual relations, that we have this issue of sexualization. It is important that as individuals belonging to different communities that we unite together on the tackling of this issue and focus on the importance of raising awareness about the reality of the situation. It is such issues within society that have made me adamant to become the head of an Islamic society at the University of Birmingham in hopes to set up initiatives such as workshops to empower females on the importance of leading productive lives and to get away from this sexualization and to not feel like they have to live in the way society dictates it, the way friends dictate it, the way social media dictates it. We have to know our self-worth and lead productive lives. This is what we were created for. We've all got a purpose in existence and we need to realize it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Batul. I have a question. Listening to your speech, I found it a bit curious that men are rather absent in the sense that sexualization is also something that is perhaps perpetuated or done by men to women. In particular, because I'm reminded of feminist debates where the question is, well, how do you deal with it? Is the onus on women then again, to keep men from doing certain things and so on?
Yeah.
Then again, you find yourself in a situation where shame might be put on women. So my question is, where do you see men's role in that?
So that's a very good question. So essentially, due, unfortunately, to time constraints, I actually had a paragraph where I was going to speak about that specifically, but unfortunately, I didn't have the time, but I can elaborate on it now. So mainly what I'm trying to get at is from the females. So I spoke about the importance of the marriage institution and how anything which threatens this institution should be combated. And we should all stand in resistance against that. And one of the things which threatens that is when men seek that sexual fulfillment outside the realm of marriage. So in essence, if we want to create a healthy society where everyone's morale and spirit is healthy, then both men and women have rights and responsibilities. And the responsibility of the women, of course, in that case would be that within the so there's a time and place for everything. Within the marital environment, that's where your sexuality manifests, right? Outside the household, that should be put to a much lesser extent. And the man's responsibility, therefore, is to not seek sexual fulfillment outside of marriage. A lot of the times we see that because of the sexualization of the females, that encourages men to go outside of the marital environment. So as women, and specifically and particularly because this is a women's issue, I thought perhaps I will steer it and focus more on the women's aspect. But of course, as women, if we empower ourselves and we don't get ourselves sexualized, then we're prohibiting and inhibiting a lot of the times the men from acting on their sexual instincts. But of course, the responsibility of a man in this case, even if a woman is manifesting her sexuality or not in public, he should not seek that sexual fulfillment outside the realm of marriage. That is his responsibility. So I'll make that clear, of course. Thank you. Is that the only question? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Batul. Our next contestant is Miss Miku Pankost, and she will be questioning whether sexism still poses a threat in classical musicians. Please welcome Miku.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me here today to speak at the Women's Federation for World Peace. It's an honor to be here. My name is Miku Pankost, and I am a musician. I received my master's at the Royal College of Music in London, and I play the violin and the viola. Before I moved to London, I lived in Belgium, where I started my musical training at the age of 6. And this is where my story begins. I would like to share with you my first orchestral concert experience. My parents took me to see the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra in Germany. It was my first concert ever, and I didn't quite know what to expect. I was very, very excited. And it's one of the world's greatest orchestras. I remember sitting up at the top of the concert hall, looking down at an older crowd, and the stage was empty. I dangled my feet from the seats, and I didn't quite know what to anticipate, really. As I watched the orchestra file onto the stage, I saw a large group of musicians, but, to my surprise, most of whom were male. They resumed their positions in the principal seats, like the brass, the percussion, the woodwind, the concertmaster seat, as well as the conductor's podium. The considerably fewer women would have been dotted around in the strings or perhaps in the harp section. At a young, impressionable age, I left with the impression that male musicians were the orchestra's natural leaders, men perform quite literally on the loudest instruments and, on a greater scale, have the loudest voice in society. Today, I would like to share with you the issue of imbalance in my profession. I'm sure mine is not the only one that experiences this still. Classical music is divided into various sectors. So there's chamber music, opera, composition, conducting, and orchestral playing. Change in gender imbalance can start in classical music, as it sees itself as the custodian of culture. Classical music sees itself as a high art. Therefore, the music world can set the tone for gender roles in broader society, because culture matters. Women should be encouraged and allowed the same leadership positions as men, and whether it's in music or whether it's in society. Music has such a massive impact on everyone. It's always consumed, and therefore change can become, there can be greater potential for positive change in society. We can compare this to the current allegations regarding Harvey Weinstein, a Hollywood producer who has been accused of sexually harassing female actors. Culturally, film is similar to the way music influences society, so the values of these industries can rub off on society. Gender imbalance is not new. This has been apparent hundreds of years ago. There were few women, like Clara Schumann, Fanny Mendelssohn, and Anna Maria Mozart. You might even recognize the last one being Mozart. These were talented women, but they were not made famous, while their brothers and husbands were. These women were overshadowed. They never received the opportunities nor the training that their male counterparts had. And still to this day, women appear less in roles of composers and conductors than men. It's still an issue. Maren Alsop is a famous female conductor from the United States. And she was the first female to conduct the last night of the BBC Proms in 2013. The BBC Proms being one of the country's largest cultural events at the Royal Albert Hall. She said, would you believe, that it was shocking that there would still be a first for any woman in the 21st century. The modern viewpoint from some male conductors have given us the right to believe that women are not welcome in their profession. This is made particularly clear by two young, world-class male musicians, and this is the first one being Bruno Mantovani. And would you believe he is a headmaster of the Paris Conservatoire, that's a specialist school in Paris. And he said that conducting is physically too demanding for women. In the same year, Russian conductor Vasily Petrenko chimed in, saying that a girl on the podium might distract male musicians. The conductor or the maestro is a supreme leader. He is afforded a godlike status. He's almost invariably male, emphasizing that the profession of conducting is especially stuck in gender bias. A conductor like Maren Alsop has shown us how women can be strong in that profession and successful. So women are faced with a dilemma. And what is the solution? This is where appearance plays a role in the lives of young female musicians. Appearance may help some women succeed over artistic integrity. Men would never have to face this kind of dilemma. Unfortunately, like women in pop music, some women in classical music also choose to wear tighter clothing, shorter skirts, lower tops. Classical music, if of any form of music, should be a profession based on merit and merit alone. There is a clear imbalance in gender expectation for musicians. Men do not have to go through this. So, is this where the high art has come? With these cultural biases being still an issue, orchestras back in the 1970s and 80s developed the blind auditions. Now you're thinking, what are blind auditions? They're quite literally where you stand behind a curtain, it's a candidate, female or male, and they cannot wear high heels, and they cannot speak, so as to conceal gender. They are not allowed to, so orchestras have seen an intake of more female players since, but the proportion of female musicians in leading orchestras still lags. Vienna Philharmonic, another world-class orchestra, in 1997, would you believe, took off its ban for female players, where 6 of 138 players were women. I looked on their website leading up to the speech, and I recounted the list. There are 13 now. 13 out of 138 musicians are women. So that makes 9% of the orchestra women. And also, I played in an orchestra project this week, so I couldn't help, look at where the gender was proportioned. And I found that 9 out of 13 subsections of the orchestra had male leaders, including the conductor and the male concerto soloist. So we think, how about women in leadership positions? There are 61 full-member orchestras of the Association of British Orchestras. Between them, they cover 100 titled conductors' roles. Can you believe that only 3 are occupied by women? Clearly, blind auditions are not the panacea. Women still face cultural barriers that cannot be concealed by a curtain. This creates the cultural bias before candidates reach the audition room. We can see in our society that there are principles from legislations, such as the Gender Equality Act, that have not created equal pay. Women players are usually concentrated in the string sections and men in the brass. Cultural and social stereotypes still sway parents and teachers to encourage their children to play specific instruments, such as the girly instruments like violin and flute, like myself, or the strong, boyish instruments such as brass, trumpet, trombones. We need to address culture and break gender bias. We need to make changes for girls to be educated in whatever instrument they would like. We need to go from the grassroots level of music and project higher changes for women in leadership positions, not only in classical music, but also in greater society. This will make our cultural leaders, the musicians, and the world of the high arts responsible custodians of culture, and will help smooth the barriers between gender expectations and gender imbalances on larger scales of society. To end my speech, I would like for all of us to go back in time and imagine yourself as myself, as a little child, or imagine you have a daughter, and you're sitting in that concert hall watching the Berlin Philharmonic. And as the lights dim and the applause stops, you can close your eyes and hear a spectrum of notes. And what do you hear? It's simply music. It's not based on cultural expectation nor gender. It's just based on art itself and on music itself. With this thought, let's imagine a world where women could have every opportunity and strength to pursue their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Miku. Just got a question. Oh, yeah, just keep you on the stage.
My apologies.
That's okay. You talked about female conductors.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? Do they advocate other women to?
Yes, they do.
Promoting them to come to the forefront?
Sure, that's a really good question. Marina Alsop is one of many female conductors. I only used her because she was, in such a big cultural event such as the prom. She was the first lady conductor to be there. But she advocates for educating teenagers and children at a younger age to begin conducting through courses and through school programs, through El Sistema, as well as other programs. So it is addressed, and her other female colleagues do the same. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miku. Our last but not least contestant, Miss Preet Dev. She shall be talking to us about economic empowerment. Everybody, please join me in welcoming Preet. Sorry?
okay. I saw this. Sorry.
Right.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. This is a story. This is my story and my reflections and my dream, recurring dream I had since my childhood. It goes something like this. I'm standing in the middle of a pool of quicksand. My hands and my legs are chained, and I'm sinking. I cry countless tears in the hope that someone will come to my rescue, and they will break these chains and set me free. Now, over the years, I've gradually understood the deeper meaning of this dream. Deep down in my heart, I was aware that there was something within me I had to change before any help arrived. I had to act. Curiously and interestingly, I also feel that this dream was part of my forthcoming destiny. My dream was demonstrating to me how I can convert the vision of the woman within an Asian culture as a liability to an asset by empowering ourselves. The woman empowering herself within an oppressive culture. I came to the UK as a 21-year-old bride, married to a British Indian man whose family treated me like a maid from the day one. That is not the honeymoon period a 21-year-old would expect. My new husband, now ex-husband, informed me that he's already in a relationship with another girl, so he's only married me because of the family pressures. What could I do? I knew if I raised these issues with my family back home, I would only get a backlash. 1 whole year of severe abuse passed by, in total confusion in my head, and then suddenly I decided to leave one day. I packed my bags and I called the police. While I waited for the police, I must have cried myself to sleep. While I slept, I had my childhood dream for the last time. However, this time, it had changed. Instead of crying in my dream this time, I was pulling hard at those chains and they suddenly broke. As soon as they broke, I touched the quicksand and it turned into lush green, fertile ground. I pulled myself out. I was not covered in sand. I was clean and fresh. I saw a beautiful but shiny sun, and I walked towards it, feeling liberated and rejuvenated. Albert Einstein said, "We cannot solve the problems with the same level of thinking that created them." In my dream, those chains broke at a point when I started to realize that there was something within me had to shift, and it did shift. I converted myself from being a liability to an asset as I became an independent thinker by upgrading my thinking process. Nobody within my culture could look upon me as a liability anymore. I remember when I moved to London after being free from the abuse, my initial thoughts were, wow, I can do anything I want to in the whole world. I was too naive to see any limitations. I could only see the possibilities. Firstly, I chopped my 1 meter long hair. Then I got a belly button pierced. I had to express the rebellious side of me. I had to express the freedom, the liberty, the I after such a repression. I found myself engaged in this vision of me working in the city of London and wearing a business suit. And I worked hard on my vision. After sort of a year, and had some of the best business suits made, and I did realize my wildest dreams, and I ended up working for some of the best software companies in the world. I believe I was able to realize, manifest my vision, because I had broken free from those chains both in my dream and in reality. It took me hardships to understand that I had to challenge my own limiting beliefs and train myself to become self-sufficient. My vision has now expanded. Today, I feel I would not be looked upon as a liability within my own culture or looked down upon it by anybody as I became an independent thinker. I'm a daughter of India, apparently only supposed to be trained to be a good cook and a cleaner and expected to play a role of an obedient wife. My vision now is that I want to help women to redefine their thinking process and break free from those chains of the mind and the conditioning, whatever it may be. This will only happen when we learn to take care of our mind and our thinking process on a daily basis. Until we learn to take care of our mind, we will always be stuck through different situations. I understood that we have nearly 80,000 thoughts a day. The bigger challenge is that we have more 80,000 thoughts, similar 80,000 thoughts the next day. Mind is an inner faculty of our inner being. It's a function of the soul. Mind should not be in charge of our actions. We should not be a product of our own mind and follow it around wherever it takes us. Then we don't have our own personality, the inner, the true personality. If you think of an egg, if we break the egg from the outside, life finishes. But when it's broken from the inside, life begins. So when we understand to learn to live our truth from the inside, that's when we can truly take care of our mind and be true to our inner being. So today, I urge each one of you to break free from those conditioning of the mind and whatever it may be. And it's time for me to ask you a question. How do you envision your future, your destiny, after breaking free from those chains that mind has imprisoned you with? And my last reflective question, who is your servant? Who is the master? Is it you or is it your mind? Thank you.
I'd wrote something before.
That's okay.
I would maybe rather change it now, but anyhow, I'll go ahead with it. How do you see, I mean, you've emphasized the internal change effectively, but how do you see the momentum for change in woman's status and capacity to express herself? Do you see it an increasing momentum? Do you see it stuck? How do you see that sort of process of momentum?
My study has been a spiritual one. From last sort of 10 years, I have been studying different spiritual paths to understand. So my understanding will be that when we learn to really truly connect with our inner self, that's when we really raise our vibrational frequency, and then all the other issues started to resolve itself. So I feel we are in the middle of spiritual revolution. People are having their spiritual awakening, and even though they don't understand maybe, but they're still talking about spiritual values and embracing them and bringing them in their lives. So I feel it is increasing. I hear this from many young women. They are embracing this, and we are going through in the middle of spiritual revolution where people are learning to live life inside out rather than outside in, living a consumerism world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the speech contest for today. I want to say a big well done to all the ladies today. I think there was so much to draw from each and every one of your pieces. And so next up, we'll be having basically a 30-minute break. And this will allow the judges to evaluate. And there's some light refreshments downstairs. So if everybody could be back by around 3:15, is that okay? Yeah. Enjoy, network, share some love, some laughter. And I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Yeah, we could have asked more questions. Yeah. We decided amongst ourselves, and we told like a particular way to do it, and we wanted to speak to everybody. So we had this idea that Mitty would start off speaking about one of the people who are not in the top three, and Christina would then do two of the people who are not in the top three, and I would do one. And then we would come round again, and Mitty would introduce the third place, Christina would introduce the second place, and I would introduce the first place.
Yeah, no, so basically all you have to do, I guess, is call the jury on stage, or whatever you feel comfortable with, or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Mitty is going to start again, so the order is always the same.
Yeah, so it's Mitty, Christina, me,
so just remember
each
how we are
time.
sitting.
And I think there's something to give to each of them, because there's a finalist certificate.
Yeah, as well this year, I think that's...
So everybody's got something to receive, so even those who are not 1, 2 and 3, because there are certificates for the finalists. So each time there will be a presentation.
Yeah, so I guess we'll give them the
We'll give them when we say something.
Yeah. There she is. She's coming. She has my notes.
Right. Yeah, she's good.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys have had a nice break, filled up your stomachs, quenched your thirsts. I spoke to everybody. Now going to invite the judges onto the stage, and they would like to give a brief commentary on each of the finalists before we start with presenting the awards. So with no further ado, can I invite Mrs. Mitty, please, onto the stage?
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for their wonderful contribution to this Young Women's Speech Contest. This is our third one this year, and each year the quality is getting better and better. And just wanted to make a little comment. I think we're going to go and around and give a little comment to everybody, just a little feedback. So to Winnie, I'd like to just say thank you so much for your speech. I was very moved, and I know it's not an easy task to get up and speak, but you were very brave, and you did a really, really good job. And I would really urge you to continue, because it's only one step. And more practice, the more you practice, the better each time you'll get. I was really, really, really grateful for you sharing about your journey. So thank you so much. Yeah, so maybe I'll invite Christine to come next, yeah.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Now I can see what you felt like standing here. I wanted to make a few comments about Corina. You made me laugh in a good way, in an entirely good way. I really enjoyed listening to your speech. You captured the attention of us as an audience. You were very convinced, in a convincing way, and you had great lines, a lot of punchy lines that I do remember, such as "so do we." It's common sense. You answered our questions very well, which weren't always easy to answer. I know that. I think you will be an amazing speaker. I think you can have the courage to speak a bit more freely and not read off the script, because you have what it takes, to engage the audience, to tell them what you think, and also, importantly, how this is going to be put into practice. So well done. I'd also like to say a few words about Preet. Where's Preet? Here. Okay, hi. I love the way you used metaphors. Your speech was filled with various metaphors. I remember the egg that is broken from the inside or the outside. I remember how you started talking, telling us about your dream, your childhood dream, and how it finally went away. This was very strong imagery that was very well delivered, and a really good rhetorical use that you made very good use of. I also admired the way you came to stage without any notes whatsoever. Even I brought some notes with me. This is very impressive, and you pulled this off very well. I thought sometimes you could have been even a bit more self-confident in the way you delivered your speech, in telling us your story. But overall, it was a very strong speech. Congratulations. Very well done.
So, it falls to me to say something to Batul. Batul, in terms of your speaking skills and confidence, you did very, very well. Your engagement, I felt, was excellent. Good eye contact, very good engagement with the audience, good variation of tone and verbal emphasis that brought over what you wanted to say, and an awful lot of conviction in there as well, which is very important when you want to share something. We agreed as a judging panel there could be a greater breadth of argument in there in what you presented. But overall, I was very impressed by your ability to engage with the audience, so many thanks to you.
So I have the honor to announce the third prize for a wonderful speech and wonderful stage presence. And that prize will go to Fidelia. Glad to.
Thank you so much for this certificate. This was my first. This was my first time speaking to people about my story, and I couldn't be more thankful for the audience that I had today, because during the break, everyone was so supportive. And it was very, very difficult for me to share this story, because even in practicing, I, like Winnie, couldn't contain everything, and it is very, very difficult, but I'm so glad that you guys gave me so much feedback. So thank you.
Okay. So, the second prize of this year's speech contest goes to Miku. Miku Pentos. Congratulations. Congratulations. I think we have to pose for the camera. Yep. Okay. Thank you. I want to say a few words, and then I give you the opportunity to say a few words. I want to say a few words. I was really, when I went to look at the speeches and read them, I couldn't believe that Miko wanted to write about inequality in the classical music profession, because I just published a book on that. And so I was very eager to read it, afraid I'd be disappointed by the quality of the content, but in fact it was the complete opposite. You've done an immense amount of research that isn't even out there. You've done really well in presenting the facts. It's a very factual analysis. You are looking at a range of issues that contribute to ongoing gender inequalities in music. You are also very good at drawing in current examples. You talked about the Weinstein case at the moment, which is a good rhetorical tool, again, to draw the audience in. But lastly, it wasn't only the content that I thought was really strong, but also your delivery of the speech. I found that you were very much yourself. Especially in the beginning and at the end, I felt I got a feeling of who you were and of meeting you. So well done, congratulations.
Here I am again. Thank you very much for this wonderful prize. It's been such a great learning process for me. This is my first public speaking event. As a musician, I'm usually playing with my violin or my viola. But today has been such an honor. It's been wonderful to look at everyone in the room, and that we're here for the same reason, and that gives me a lot of strength. Thank you very much.
So, it's not too much of a mystery anymore, of course, because you can see who's come up already. But let me just say something maybe a little bit more generally to begin with. And first thing that struck me was how many of you have passed through adversity yourselves. And the fact that you can talk to that is actually very important, because that's something that touches the heart. So, Winnie, I mean, you were obviously feeling very acutely what you were talking about. That's a very moving and important thing. I also felt, for many of you, it's not surprising in a sense when you stand in this very intimidating position. But as you develop as public speakers, one of the most important things to know is that whilst, of course, you have to keep to time and you have to make your points, it's actually much more powerful not to be too scripted. So what I would say to all of you is, better than a script is a set of bullet points. So there's things you don't want to miss out, but the most powerful moments are when you're speaking with the inspiration that's coming to you at the moment. And that's why, for example, it was impressive when Miku didn't seem to be following a script at all at the beginning and the end, but speaking very, very freely. Amongst all of you, though, although Jodie did keep to her script very closely, as I read the script before in preparation for the event, there was no impression of her doing that. Not only was she not looking at anything, except maybe now and again just to check where she was at, but actually the whole thing was as if there wasn't a script at all. And her use of gesture and different tone and intonation, it conveyed an awful lot and drew people in and brought their attention very strongly. And for me, that was strikingly more so than any other of the speakers who spoke to us this afternoon. So if you can also, and maybe you've done it before, who am I to say what you have or haven't done in the past, if also you can develop that capacity to have a few guiding points, but to able to speak extemporaneously and, you know, really catch people in the moment, as well as your obvious skills in appearing like that, when you're like that as well, then that may be even more powerful for you in the future. Also, along with several of you actually, you also alluded to research and quoted things. That's always a very important point, that you're actually referring to something wider than your own words in terms of being able to give credence to the things you're talking about. So several of you did that very well, and that's very important. But anyhow, it falls to me now to invite Jodie to the stage and to present her with the first prize for this Women's Federation speech contest.
Thank you, Danya.
Say something.
Thank you. Danya, thank you so much. I really was not expecting this at all. I was telling every person that I've been spreading the awareness about the Women's Federation and about the speech contest, that I was really doing it purely for the experience and to grow during the process and to meet like-minded people. From the beginning, I looked at the Women's Federation. I found that the values that you all hold is so connected to what we value and to who I am as a person. And so I was drawn into the opportunity purely because of what you're doing for the community and such. And so it was just such an honour to be in the process. And I was even telling my partner downstairs that I felt like a winner already, and I could have easily walked out after the speech and just felt really fulfilled. So this was not expected, and this is incredible. So well done to you all too for the work that you're doing and what you're involved with, and well done to every contestant that spoke. You're all very inspiring, and we discussed that every person has their own essence, and don't lose that. Don't lose your uniqueness, because that's really what makes you special. And it's also incredible to see that even though we're so different, we've all undergone struggle, and we've all undergone things in our lives that we've had to overcome and that we can now use to help people, and that's inspiring. So from that alone, I've got so much out of this competition, and well done to everyone who's been involved and who've just come to support. So I'm immensely grateful, and I can't wait to see where all this connection goes. And my partner and I are moving to Nepal for 6 months next year to keep focusing on our volunteering. And so it'd be amazing to see the Women's Federation members there and to see where we can work together to keep making a positive difference. So Danya, thank you so much, and it was a great honour. Thank you.
Good acceptance speech. Without a script.
Wow. Thank you, everybody, so much. I think we're all really happy with how this turned out, and I hope you guys have enjoyed yourselves. We would also like to thank the judges very much for your great support in fulfilling such, what I can imagine, a challenging task. I'd like to say thank you to the audience for your attendance and support. Representing the Women's Federation today, I hope that today's event has sown good seeds and inspired you, and that each of you will be encouraged to live your life with greater vision and desire for tomorrow in the future. Regarding the Women's Federation speech contest for Young Women 2018, we will consider which issue could be adopted as a theme very shortly. If you look at your programs, I think there's an option where you can write down what you would like to see as a theme for next year. But that will be publicized in the near future. And you can, of course, access our website, www.wfwp.org.uk, and for further information. And just to mention that the winner also is allowed the opportunity of attending the EU conference for the Women's Federation, which will be happening in Portugal in early November. So that's an opportunity Jodie can consider if she wants to attend, which is really great. And one last announcement. Oh, actually, never mind about that one. I think I've said all I need to say, but thank you so much. It's been a really good day today, and let's make everlasting connections. Also, we're just going to have some photography. So if you guys could get your pose skills, shine your shoe. Could we have the judges and the contestants come onto the stage? All the contestants, everyone, please.
Let's take another picture, but this time everyone in your seats. I'll stand here. And you guys. Okay. I think they want. Oh, okay. You might want to hug the photo opportunities. Okay, great. Come on to your seats. We'll take one more picture. I'll take it from the stage. Okay.